Naomi, you're a cultural misfit, Mason said flatly, sliding a termination package across his mahogany desk. We need people who reflect the new Bright Nova, team players who fit our vision. I sat there, stunned, watching the man who had been our VP of strategy for barely 3 months deliver what felt like a death sentence to my 12-year career. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in his corner office, casting harsh shadows across his face. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Austin's skyline gleamed in the afternoon sun. But inside this room, everything felt cold and calculated. "I'm sorry. What?" I managed to say, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Mason leaned back in his chair, adjusting his designer tie with the kind of smugness that made my skin crawl. "Your numbers are fine, Naomi. Great even. But numbers aren't everything anymore. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, and frankly, you don't embody the collaborative spirit we're building here." I stared at him, processing his words. Fine? My numbers were fine? I had just closed the Hudson & Vale apparel renewal 3 weeks ago, a $5.6 million contract that took 8 months to negotiate. I had won the President's Club Award 4 years running. I had mentored half the sales team through their biggest deals. But apparently, that was just fine. "Mason," I said, keeping my tone professional despite the rage building in my throat. "Could you help me understand what specifically about my collaboration style concerns you?" He shuffled through some papers on his desk, not meeting my eyes. "It's not about specifics, Naomi. It's about perception. The team feels you're too independent. Too focused on your own success rather than lifting others up." The irony hit me like a slap. I had spent countless hours training junior associates, sharing my client contact strategies, and covering for colleagues when they struggled with difficult accounts. But Mason had arrived with his Harvard MBA and his buzzword vocabulary, determined to reshape Bright Nova in his image. "I see," I said quietly, a strange calm settling over me. "Vision is important. I hope it brings you clarity." Mason's eyes flickered with confusion at my response, probably expecting anger or pleading. Instead, I reached for the termination package and began reading through it methodically. 60 days of severance. Continuation of health benefits for 90 days. A standard non-compete clause that would expire in 6 months. "This seems reasonable," I said, signing each page with deliberate precision. "I assume my final day is today?" "Well, yes," Mason stammered, clearly thrown by my composed reaction. "Security will escort you to clean out your desk." I stood up, smoothing my navy blazer. "That won't be necessary. I can find my way." As I reached the door, I turned back. "Oh, and Mason, you might want to check with Hudson & Vale, Zenpet Pharmaceuticals, and Ridgepoint Logistics about transition plans. They'll probably have questions." The last thing I saw was the flicker of panic in his eyes before I closed the door behind me. Walking back to my desk felt like moving through a dream. The familiar hum of the Bright Nova Solutions office, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the constant buzz of a thriving marketing tech firm, seemed muted and distant. I had spent 12 years building my career here, turning this place into a second home. My desk sat in the corner of the sales floor, surrounded by the awards and photos that told the story of my professional life. The crystal trophy from last year's President's Club, a photo of our team celebrating the Ridgepoint Logistics contract signing. Thank you notes from clients pinned to my bulletin board like badges of honor. "Naomi?" Jessica's voice made me look up. She was 26, bright-eyed, and one of my most successful mentees. "Is everything okay? Mason's assistant said you were in a meeting for over an hour." I smiled at her. This brilliant young woman I had helped navigate her first major client presentation just 2 months ago. "Everything's fine, Jess. Just some strategic discussions about the future." She frowned, her intuition clearly picking up on something. "Are you sure? You look..." "I look like someone who just got a wake-up call," I said. opening my desk drawer and pulling out a small cardboard box. Sometimes the universe has a way of pushing us toward where we're supposed to be. As I began packing my personal items, other team members started drifting over. David from the creative department, who had collaborated with me on countless campaigns. Patricia from account management, who had become a close friend over the years. They watched with growing confusion as I carefully wrapped my awards in tissue paper. "Naomi, what's happening?" Patricia asked, her voice tight with concern. "Mason has decided I'm not the right cultural fit for the new Bright Nova," I explained calmly, placing a framed photo of my graduation from the University of Texas into the box. "He's probably right. I've never been great at playing politics." The silence that followed was deafening. David's face flushed with anger. "That's insane. You're the best account director we have. Your clients worship you." "Which is exactly why this will all work out fine," I said, sealing the box with tape. "Trust is a powerful thing. It doesn't disappear just because someone changes their business card." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "This isn't fair. You trained all of us. You've carried this company for years." I stood up, box in hand, and looked around at these people who had become family. Life isn't about fair, Jess. It's about recognizing opportunities. Sometimes the biggest favor someone can do for you is to set you free. As I walked toward the elevator, I felt strangely light. The weight of corporate politics, of trying to fit into someone else's vision, was already lifting from my shoulders. I had spent 12 years being excellent at my job. Now it was time to find out what I could build when I was excellent for myself. The elevator doors closed, and I caught my reflection in the polished steel. For the first time in months, I was smiling. The first thing I did when I got home was pour myself a glass of wine and sit on my apartment balcony overlooking Lady Bird Lake. The Austin skyline stretched before me, the same view I had admired every evening after long days at Bright Nova. But today, something fundamental had shifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "This is bullshit. Half the team is ready to quit." I typed back, "Don't do anything rash. Focus on taking care of your clients. That's what matters." But even as I sent the message, I knew Patricia was right. Mason had made a catastrophic miscalculation. In his rush to reshape the company culture, he had forgotten a basic truth about the marketing industry. Relationships are everything. Clients don't work with companies. They work with people they trust. I opened my laptop and began drafting emails. Not angry screeds or bitter complaints, but professional notes to my 3 biggest clients. Hudson and Vale Apparel, where I had worked with CEO Rebecca Hudson for 6 years. Zenpet Pharmaceuticals, whose chief marketing officer had become a close friend. Ridgepoint Logistics, a family-owned company that had grown from a regional trucking firm to a national supply chain powerhouse under my guidance. Each email was carefully crafted, expressing gratitude for years of partnership and explaining that I would no longer be their point of contact at Bright Nova. I thanked them for their trust, their collaboration, and their friendship. I didn't mention Mason or the circumstances of my departure. I simply said that I was exploring new opportunities and wished them continued success. As I hit send on the last email, my phone rang. Rebecca Hudson's name appeared on the screen. "Naomi, I just got your email. What the hell happened?" Rebecca's voice was sharp with concern. We had built Hudson & Vale's entire digital marketing strategy together, taking them from a small boutique brand to a nationally recognized name in sustainable fashion. Mason and I had different visions for my role, I said diplomatically. It seemed best for everyone if I pursued other opportunities. "That's corporate speak, and you know it," Rebecca shot back. "Did they fire you? Because if they did, they just made the stupidest business decision in history." I laughed, surprised by the warmth in my chest. "I appreciate the vote of confidence, Rebecca, really. It's not a vote of confidence. It's a statement of fact. You've been instrumental in our growth. The new campaign you designed increased our online sales by 40%. Our upcoming holiday launch. That was your strategy from beginning to end. Before I could respond, another call came in. Zenpet's CMO, then Ridgepoint's marketing director. Within 2 hours, I had fielded calls from all 3 of my major clients, each expressing shock, disappointment, and something else. Opportunity. By evening, I had made a decision. If Mason wanted to rebuild Bright Nova's culture, he could do it without the clients who had made the company profitable, and I would help them find a new home, one where relationships mattered more than corporate buzzwords. The seed of an idea was taking root, and it felt like freedom. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. While Mason was probably settling into his corner office, preparing to announce his bold new direction for Bright Nova, I was already 3 steps ahead. I started with coffee and a legal pad, sketching out the framework for what would become Berger and Company. The concept was simple: a boutique marketing consultancy focused on building authentic relationships with clients, rather than managing them through corporate hierarchies. No middle management, no cultural fit assessments, just results. My phone rang at 8 a.m. sharp. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. "Naomi, you need to know what's happening here," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "Mason called an all-hands meeting. He's announcing your departure and introducing your replacement." "My replacement?" I set down my coffee, intrigued. They moved fast. "It's Kyle Morrison from the Phoenix office. He's supposed to take over your accounts immediately." "But Naomi, he's never worked with any of your clients. He doesn't know their industries, their challenges, their personalities. It's going to be a disaster." I felt a mixture of anger and satisfaction. Kyle was competent enough, but he was a corporate climber who viewed clients as revenue streams rather than partnerships. Putting him in charge of accounts I had nurtured for years was like asking a stranger to perform surgery. "How are the clients reacting?" I asked. "That's the thing," Jessica said, lowering her voice. "Mason hasn't told them yet. He's planning to have Kyle call them this afternoon to introduce himself as their new point of contact. He thinks it'll be a smooth transition because the contracts are with Bright Nova, not with you personally." The hubris was breathtaking. Mason genuinely believed that clients were interchangeable assets that could be passed around like office supplies. He had no understanding of the personal investment, the trust, the years of relationship building that made these partnerships successful. "Jessica, I need you to listen carefully," I said. "Don't do anything that could jeopardize your job. But if any of my former clients call asking questions, be honest with them. Tell them exactly what happened and who their new contact will be." "Naomi, I don't think—" "Trust me," I interrupted. "The truth has a way of clarifying situations." After hanging up, I called my lawyer. Setting up an LLC would take a few days, but I could begin consulting work immediately as a sole proprietor. Business insurance, accounting systems, client contracts, the logistics were manageable. What mattered was positioning myself to catch the opportunity that was about to fall into my lap. At 11 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Hudson. "Just got a call from some kid named Kyle who says he's my new account manager. Are you kidding me? Call me." I waited. Patience was crucial now. Let Kyle introduce himself. Let the client see exactly what they were getting in exchange for the relationship they had built with me. By noon, I had messages from all 3 major clients. By 2 p.m., I had formal emails requesting meetings to discuss their future marketing needs. By 4 p.m., I was drafting proposals for Berger and Company's first consulting contracts. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mason had fired me for being a cultural misfit, but he had unknowingly created the perfect conditions for my independence. Every email from a confused client, every phone call expressing concern about the transition, every question about my availability for freelance work was validation that relationships, not corporate culture, drove business success. That evening, I received a call from David in Bright Nova's creative department. "Naomi, I don't know if you've heard, But Kyle had his first client call with Hudson and Vale today. Rebecca hung up on him after 20 minutes. She said he spent the entire time talking about Bright Nova's innovative solutions, instead of listening to her concerns about the holiday campaign. I winced. Rebecca Hudson was brilliant, demanding, and had zero tolerance for being patronized. Kyle had probably walked into that call with a standard pitch deck instead of understanding that Rebecca valued strategic dialogue over corporate presentations. "That's unfortunate," I said diplomatically. "It gets worse. Mason is in damage control mode. He's personally calling clients to smooth things over, but he's never worked directly with any of them. He doesn't know Rebecca's business model, or ZenPet's regulatory requirements, or Ridgepoint's supply chain challenges." The house of cards was already wobbling. I almost felt sorry for Kyle. He was a decent account manager who had been set up to fail. But business was business, and Mason had created this mess with his arrogance and poor judgment. "David," I said carefully, "if any clients ask about my contact information, you have my permission to share it." The revolution was beginning. Wednesday morning brought the call I had been expecting. Rebecca Hudson, CEO of Hudson and Vale Apparel, didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Naomi, I'm terminating our contract with Bright Nova. That Kyle person is completely incompetent, and Mason clearly has no idea how to handle our account. I want to hire you directly. What do I need to do?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define everything. "Rebecca, I appreciate your confidence, but I need to be completely transparent. I'm starting my own consultancy, which means I can offer you more personalized service than any large agency. But I also need to make sure you understand the implications of leaving Bright Nova mid-contract." "I've already talked to our legal team," Rebecca said briskly. "The contract has performance clauses. If Bright Nova fails to deliver the agreed-upon services with qualified personnel, we can terminate for cause. Yesterday's call with Kyle was enough documentation for our lawyers." I felt a surge of admiration for Rebecca's decisiveness. She had built Hudson and Vale from a small sustainable fashion startup into a $50 million brand by making tough decisions quickly and surrounding herself with competent people. "In that case," I said, "I'd love to discuss how Berger and Company can support your goals." By Thursday, I had signed contracts with all 3 of my former major clients. Hudson and Vale wanted to maintain their aggressive growth strategy while launching a new line of eco-friendly activewear. ZenPet Pharmaceuticals needed help navigating new FDA regulations for their pet supplement marketing. Ridgepoint Logistics was expanding into the Pacific Northwest and needed a comprehensive digital strategy. The combined value of these contracts was $8.2 million over the next 18 months. More than I had ever managed as a single account director. More than enough to establish Berger and Company as a serious player in the Austin marketing scene. But the real satisfaction came from knowing that each client had chosen to work with me not because of corporate politics or cultural fit, but because of proven results and trusted relationships. Friday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I recognized but hadn't expected to see. Mason Caldwell. "Naomi?" His voice was strained, lacking the confident smugness from our termination meeting. "I think we need to talk." "Hello, Mason. How can I help you?" "Look, there seems to be some confusion with our clients. Hudson and Vale, ZenPet, and Ridgepoint have all submitted termination notices. I'm hoping you can help clarify the situation." I leaned back in my desk chair, looking out at the Austin skyline where I was now renting temporary office space in a co-working facility downtown. "I'm not sure what needs clarification. I assume they explained their concerns during the transition process." "This is about the non-compete clause in your severance agreement," Mason said, his tone shifting toward threatening. "You can't solicit Bright Nova clients for 6 months." "Mason, I haven't solicited anyone. These clients reached out to me after experiencing the new service level at Bright Nova. They made their own business decisions based on their own needs." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Naomi," Mason finally said, "what would it take to bring you back? We could discuss a promotion, maybe a senior director role with more autonomy." The desperation in his voice was almost pitiable. A week ago, I was a cultural misfit who didn't embody collaborative spirit. Now I was suddenly promotion material. I appreciate the offer, Mason, but I'm very happy with my current situation. Berger & Company is exactly where I need to be. Your current situation is built on stealing our clients. My current situation is built on relationships I developed over 12 years of excellent service. Relationships that Bright Nova apparently didn't value enough to retain the person who created them. I hung up, feeling lighter than I had in years. The bridge was officially burned, and I couldn't have been happier about it. The following Monday brought news that exceeded even my optimistic expectations. Patricia called from Bright Nova, her voice barely containing excitement. Naomi, you're not going to believe what's happening here. It's complete chaos. I was sitting in my new office space, a modest but professional suite in a converted warehouse in East Austin. Exposed brick walls, large windows, and the kind of creative energy that actually fostered collaboration, unlike the sterile corporate environment Mason had been so proud of. Tell me, I said, though I suspected I already knew. 3 more clients terminated their contracts this morning. Goldthorn Media, Ravens Park Ventures, and Kestrel Wynn Group. They all cited concerns about service quality and relationship management. Kyle Morrison tendered his resignation. He said he was set up to fail and refused to be the scapegoat for bad strategic decisions. I felt a pang of sympathy for Kyle. He was collateral damage in Mason's cultural revolution, a competent professional who had been thrown into an impossible situation. That's unfortunate for Kyle, I said. He deserved better. But wait, there's more, Patricia continued, and I could hear the grin in her voice. The board called an emergency meeting. Apparently, losing 8 major clients in 2 weeks raised some questions about Mason's leadership vision. David heard from someone in accounting that we're looking at a 40% revenue shortfall for the quarter. The magnitude of the implosion was staggering. Mason had destroyed years of relationship building in pursuit of a cultural transformation that nobody had asked for. He had prioritized abstract concepts like collaborative spirit over concrete results like client satisfaction and revenue generation. Patricia, are you okay? Is your job secure? Actually, that's why I'm calling. The board is asking remaining staff to recommend strategies for client retention and business recovery. Your name keeps coming up in conversations. People are wondering if there's any possibility of bringing you back as a consultant or partner. The irony was delicious. 2 weeks ago, I was a cultural misfit. Now I was the solution to problems created by my absence. I appreciate the thought, but Berger & Company is committed to serving our current clients. We're not looking to take on additional partnerships right now. It was a polite way of saying what I really thought. Bright Nova had made their choice, and now they could live with the consequences. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Jessica arrived at my office with a folder under her arm and determination in her eyes. I'm giving my notice at Bright Nova, she announced without preamble. I want to work for you. I looked at this brilliant young woman who had become one of my closest mentees. Jessica, I can't match your current salary. I'm still building the business. I don't care about the salary. I care about working somewhere that values competence over politics. Somewhere I can actually learn instead of navigating corporate nonsense. Her words reminded me why I had gone into marketing in the first place, to solve problems, build relationships, and create value for clients. Somewhere along the way, Bright Nova had lost sight of those fundamentals. If you're serious about this, we'll need to discuss it properly. But I have to warn you, working for a startup consultancy is nothing like working for an established firm. It's long hours, uncertain income, and constant hustle. Jessica smiled, the same eager expression she had worn during her first client presentation 2 years earlier. Sounds perfect. When do I start? By Thursday, I had hired Jessica as my first associate and signed 2 additional clients who had heard about Berger & Company through word of mouth. By Friday, I was fielding calls from other Bright Nova refugees looking for opportunities. The cultural misfit had become the culture creator, And Mason's vision of collaborative success was coming true, just not at Bright Nova. 6 weeks after my termination, the final blow landed with surgical precision. I was reviewing quarterly projections for Berger & Company when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was familiar. Naomi, this is Robert Chen, CEO of Bright Nova Solutions. I sat up straighter, the founder himself, calling personally. This was unexpected. Hello, Mr. Chen. How can I help you? I think you know why I'm calling. We've lost 12 major clients in 6 weeks. Our Q3 revenue is down 68%. The board is asking hard questions about leadership decisions. I waited, letting the silence stretch. Robert Chen was a brilliant businessman who had built Bright Nova from a 3-person startup into a $100 million agency. But he had also been notably absent during Mason's cultural transformation, traveling extensively while his VP of strategy dismantled everything that made the company successful. I understand this is a difficult situation, I said carefully. Naomi, I made a mistake. We made a mistake. Mason's termination was approved this morning. I'm personally asking if you would consider returning as Senior Vice President of Client Relations. Full autonomy over your accounts, equity participation, and a compensation package that reflects your true value to this organization. The offer was staggering. Everything I had worked toward for 12 years, handed to me on a silver platter. SVP title, equity stakes, guaranteed autonomy. 6 weeks ago, I would have considered it a dream promotion. Mr. Chen, I'm honored by your confidence, but I have commitments to my current clients that I can't abandon. Your current clients are our former clients, Naomi. Bring them back. We'll structure the deal any way you want. You can essentially run your own division within Bright Nova. I looked around my modest office, then at Jessica working intensely at her desk, completely absorbed in developing a social media strategy for Hudson & Vale's new product launch. This space represented something that corporate equity could never provide: complete creative control and the freedom to build something authentic. Mr. Chen, those clients aren't coming back to Bright Nova. They're happy where they are. But I wish you the best in rebuilding. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Robert Chen was smart enough to recognize finality when he heard it. I respect your decision, Naomi. For what it's worth, letting you go was the worst business decision this company has ever made. 3 months later, Berger & Company had grown from a 1-person consultancy to a team of 6 specialists operating out of a beautiful converted loft in the warehouse district. We had 15 active clients, a waiting list for new business, and the kind of collaborative culture that actually produced results. The final piece of poetic justice arrived in the form of a news article in Austin Business Journal. The headline read, "Bright Nova Solutions acquired by Phoenix Marketing Group in fire sale deal." I read the article over morning coffee, sharing the details with Jessica and our team during our weekly strategy meeting. Bright Nova's valuation had dropped from $200 million to $43 million in 4 months. Robert Chen had stepped down as CEO. The Phoenix acquisition was essentially a bargain basement purchase of office space and remaining contracts. What happened to Mason? Jessica asked, curiosity evident in her voice. I pulled up his LinkedIn profile on my laptop. Looks like he's listed as an independent business transformation consultant, based in Dallas now. The team exchanged glances, processing the magnitude of one man's impact on an entire organization. Mason's pursuit of cultural fit had destroyed a company that had taken 15 years to build. Should we send him a fruit basket? David asked with dark humor. He had joined us 2 months earlier, bringing creative talent and institutional knowledge from his 5 years at Bright Nova. Actually, I said, closing the laptop, we should send him a thank you note. Without his vision of cultural transformation, none of us would be sitting here today. The laughter that followed was warm and genuine, the sound of a team that had found its footing through shared purpose rather than corporate mandate. Mason had been right about one thing. Culture did eat strategy for breakfast. He had just misunderstood what real culture looked like. We got back to work, building something better. As I reflected on the journey from that devastating termination meeting to this moment of quiet triumph, I realized that Mason's greatest mistake had been confusing control with leadership and compliance with excellence, a lesson that would guide every decision I made moving forward.